Whew. Welcome back, Rawcast listeners. If you didn't tell, if your ears deceived you, I did not open the start of this show with opening a beer. No, that's right. No beer this episode. But I do have a glass of wine. It's not even a full glass, but washing a wine glass is a bit of a pain in the ass for me. Don't have a dishwasher. In fact, I do have a dishwasher. It would be my left and right hands. I do the majority of the dishes. That's just the way it is. We've talked in previous episodes about that, but I've been trying to get my oldest son, Odin, on board, and he washes the dishes pretty well as far as an 8-year-old would go. Sometimes we do have leftovers that we have to keep an eye out for, but just happy to have him doing some chores and earning his keep around this house. But no, I'm at the time of this recording, I'm about 15 minutes shy from coming up on a 24-hour fast. And I feel surprisingly good. So, I felt like I earned that sip of wine there, folks. Because today was one of those days. This is being recorded Tuesday, the day after Labor Day. And as a postal worker, the days after holidays suck. Because the mail keeps coming. Whether we deliver it or not, that mail's coming. So that just meant that Monday's mail got held for today. And it was pretty chilly out and rained the majority of the day. So I came home half soaked. Everything that a trucker can go through, think about that for a mail carrier. But, like, for example, instead of getting sunburn on the left arm and just kind of looking uneven, just mirror image that. It's the right arm all day. So I came home with my right sleeve soaked on both arm and leg. It was chilly. Thought about turning on the heat, but didn't do it. Because I got to condition myself. I don't care if you got air conditioner in your car. End of July gets pretty fucking hot. When you're driving around in a fucking terrarium. So, that being said, really crummy, cold, wet day. But this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Because I don't know, had some thoughts that we're going to talk about in just a minute, because I want to go through a couple more updates. This one's going to get me some shit from, like, the Humane Society and PETA. But, saw a random dog and beat the shit up. No, I'm kidding. I could never do that. If you remember from a previous episode, and if I was sober enough to remember that I talked about it, we had a kind of rescued / kidnapped a stray cat. Have successfully rehabilitated him, though want to get him back in the vet for another checkup. But that was a male cat, and we already had a female cat. We had never gone through the process of getting the female cat fixed, and so all those times that I've been talking on the show, and then I kind of get distracted and talk about how I hear my cats fighting, apparently it was some pretty sexy fighting. And so all the signs are there. My darling Xena warrior princess is more than likely expecting. Ugh. The kids are excited. I'm not so excited. I know. We don't need more cats breeding because there's already more cats out there than there are homes for them, because we frown upon the crazy cat lady who ends up having social services check in on their trailer house, and you're just walking through piles of cat shit because she had 72 cats because a screw went loose, and it was all downhill for her from there. The name Jeannie comes to mind. I know that sounds just kind of random, but maybe it's because in the trailer park I had a neighbor named Jeannie. But, oh yeah, so we're going to, about 95% sure we've got kittens on the way, assuming all is well with the fetus. Is it fetuses or feti at that point? Or is it fetusi? But as long as everything's going well with the pregnancy, we are expecting a litter of kittens. Have been able to secure homes for at least 2, and I've got space for 1 more if we have to, though my wife won't be pleased. She didn't even want the orange cat to begin with, and now they're procreating. Oof. Which means somebody's getting snipped, and I'm a little envious of the fact that my cat's going to get his balls all worked on because I am long overdue for that. We got 3 goddamn kids and can't afford another one, so why have I not gotten snipped? Because abstinence is unacceptable. It's inevitable that there's going to be something screwy going on around her. But that was kind of my update there. And so I'm feeling pretty goddamn good. Other than that 1 sip of red wine, I haven't had anything to eat, though I did have 1 cup of coffee and water over the past 24 hours. So I'm feeling surprisingly alert. I actually still feel fresh given all the bullshit that I endured today. I get it. It comes with the territory. It's what I signed up for. Doesn't make it suck any less, but it just means that I have to overcome that. So, I'm having a pretty good fucking day, man. But I do want to talk about how my world got smaller. And I came to some conclusions, some discoveries, and raised even more questions about myself this past weekend. But, stop saying but. You know, when you do these long-form speaking videos, podcasts, if you do any sort of recording such as this and listen back on it, you can really pick up on some mannerisms that can even irritate yourself once you're made aware. But, get it out of the system. So, I just need, like, an additional word there. It's like if I, add some extra vegetables to that word salad, it makes it appear like it's healthier, but really it's just empty carbs and there's no nutritional value from that word. Recently, had a good think. I hadn't realized that for about the past 6 months, I got stuck in rumination. You know, when you know enough about your mind to take a step back from the real world, cut yourself out of reality and only focus on what's between your ears. Sometimes that can be good. Just like anything, in moderation. Because I took my ruminating to a point where I kind of got myself stuck in mental quicksand. And so it's just astonishing to me to look back on the last 6 months and realize how little joy I made of it. How little joy I took out of it. Either way, it's the same damn thing. There was a lot more that I could have achieved if I had been in control of my mind, not realizing that I got ensnared in that little there web of mental health meanderings. It was surprising to me to make this realization. And since this was an ongoing wow, I just drew a blank. I'm sharp. I'm alert. Beep. I looked at my notes. That's what did it in. I'm sorry, folks. I'm really sorry. In my good thinkings, I realized that this is a long history that I've been developing without my prior knowledge. I was able to come overwhelming situations that I couldn't escape by fortifying my mind and working through them. You know, the more often you do that, the easier it gets, typically, until you get knocked on your ass again, which can happen. You know, nobody wants to go through regression, but I was having a nice conversation with somebody this morning about how there is no cure, there is no quick answer to some of the mental struggles that people can deal with. And together we kind of came to the conclusion that when you're not receiving regular help, assistance, or guidance, and it's just you and your brain, sometimes more fight than peace going on between your ears, it feels more like building a house of cards. You can build it up as wide and tall and as impressive as it can be, but all it takes is that one gust of wind and your house of cards comes tumbling down. But so that made me question, well, there's got to be a way to overcome that. You know, achieving a positive mental health state does take practice, in my opinion. But is it possible to build that fortification for yourself with something a little better than playing cards? And so looking beyond that, going further back in my history, I thought about the possibility of where this got started. And I don't think it's the sole reason that I've ended up slipping with my mental health and not knowing how to carry out the self-care for my mind. But I remember back in high school playing football, and on at least one occasion, two, if I remember correctly, but I might have been seeing double, I was playing a football game. I was a lineman, even though I'm not blessed with height. Well, fuck it, let's face it. I'm 5'3", therefore, technically, by inches, I'm wider than I am tall. But there was a play where I was on defense, on the defensive line, and came up, and a gap opened between the guard and the center, and I went to fill that hole. Tried to break through the line, get to the quarterback or the running back, and unfortunately, I don't even remember who it was. If it was the halfback, fullback, quarterback, couldn't fucking tell you. Because as that gap opened and I went to shoot the gap, there was the top of somebody's helmet. Boom! Right between my eyes. Yes, I'm wearing a helmet, but helmet-to-helmet contact. And I got knocked on my ass. I don't remember hitting the ground. The next thing I remember, I'm standing on the sidelines talking to our tight end. They're just staring at me for a few seconds. And they go, well? I go, what do you mean, well? Well, for the last 5 minutes, it's been looking like you got something to say, but you haven't even opened your mouth. And a headache came on after that. And I don't know why I never said anything. I think it was because I was in a daze, but I took a really fucking hard hit I'm almost positive I had a concussion, but never even so much as talked to a doctor about it. So that has me wondering. I've avoided going to the doctor for years. I've only gone when there's like something that I know isn't going to go away. And I'm a reasonable person. I understand and respect the wonders of medicine, the medical practice. So I'm not one of those that's going to say, well, when God says it's my time to go, like, well, if I can go get antibiotics for it, I'm going to go do that, because I'm not just going to choose to take no action and die. Like, Jesus Christ, that's the stupidest thing. Well, when it's my time, it's my time. Well, you know what? Unless you're over 65, you probably should just shut up. Unless you do have a really miserable ailment. See, now I'm already walking this back because I want to make sure that I'm just being very specific about that type of moron that I'm talking about, and not somebody who could accidentally be insulted by what I'm saying. But when you got to go ahead and explain what could otherwise just be a half-assed joke, it really takes the fun out of it for me. But so, that happened on at least one occasion, I think 2 times in football. So I must have been... I didn't play junior or senior year. So I was 16 at the time. And now, to my knowledge, the brain isn't done developing until roughly 25. And so I'm very curious to... I still have to do some research into it, but I am very interested in trying to save up my shekels to go see Dr. Daniel Amen. I know he's based out of California, but in Illinois, within 4 hours of where I am, he does have an office. And so I'd be very curious to see how legitimate his research and procedures are to possibly go get my brain scanned. I think that would be an eye-opening experience for me, but to my knowledge, it's not covered under insurance, and it's quite expensive. But so, let's fast forward. I went from but to so. I don't know which one's worse. To be fair, if somebody made a compilation video for YouTube of all my butts. But. So. Butt would be the victor in that situation, in my opinion, as far as comedy would go. Or as far as a haha. But over the following years, I was diagnosed with depression when I was 20. So we're talking 4 years later. And, we're going to hover. We're going to kind of do a flyover here. I don't want to get down into the weeds, get stuck in the mud on this. But I was somebody who I would say was very much an extrovert when I was younger. I was kind of a go-getter when I wanted to, because motivation, like, I actually had to be truly inspired to get out and do it. But I was going to concerts nonstop. And then over time, by the time I was 20, that started cutting off. I wasn't going to nearly as many concerts. I wasn't going through any, like, I cut back on my hobbies. I cut back on my extracurriculars. And wow. See, my mind got stuck in my memories, but my mouth didn't keep telling you what I was thinking about. But yeah, so I cut back on everything until it was just absolute necessity. And I thought that this was just part of growing up and blah, 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 blah. But, maybe it is, I guess. But there should still be joy in life. Some people find simpler joys, others it's a little more complex. So be it. We're all different. But so yeah, coming up on the end of college, all I was doing was working and doing schoolwork, was not doing anything for myself. And then fast forward, 9 months, and there's our first child. And then that just made it even more stressful because now it's just work and raising the kid. So, I mean, school got cut out and it was immediately filled by a child. And then let's fast forward a little bit more. And I'm sorry that I'm not talking about this more quickly. So there's a lot of silence. That's how I can falsely inflate my duration, I guess. But no, then it got to the point where I was more emotionally disturbed. I was quick to lash out, quick to anger, just to the point that would even scare me because action was taken before feelings or thoughts were processed. And then from there, I stopped going to retail locations. I stopped going to the store. And I feel like I kind of justified it to a degree. My wife and I split bills, and she's the one that does the grocery shopping, typically. That's just how it's been. But is that just an over justification to enable my slip mentally? Because now we're talking that I'm uncomfortable going to the store and for what reasons? There's a lot to unpack there, a lot to explore, a lot to figure out. But then it got to the point this summer where I wouldn't even go out to the mailbox to get the mail. Now, I deliver mail for a living. So there, I justified it as, after delivering the mail, opening mailboxes all goddamn day, like, the last thing I want to do when I get home is open a mailbox. But it's like I put too much emotion behind that action. And then I realized that a bit of that is just it is a bit of social fear. Going out to the mailbox and possibly having to bump into one of my neighbors. After living in a trailer park, this is how I justified it at the time, but after spending 7 years in a very close setting at the trailer park, I had people knocking on my door multiple times a day to chat, to see if they could borrow cigarettes, if they could get a ride to the gas station, you name it. People were knocking on my door multiple times a day, every day, and they weren't exactly friends. We got along, but we didn't click. I really wasn't all that interested in what they had to talk about. And so, I mean, I really wish I could afford therapy at this point. But that was my justification, is like, okay, I want some peace and goddamn quiet. Nobody's coming up to knock on the doors at all now. And for a time, that's peaceful. But this last weekend, I realized that I was making my world get smaller. And I did have somebody reach out. Jordan, I'm sorry, man. I lied to you. When you were in town and I said it was a funky weekend, it was all mental, man. It was mental. And I apologize. It would have been great to see you and hang out. I was just that fucked up in the head at the time, man. I hope you can forgive me. So, this last weekend is when I realized that I had been spending the last 6 months. It has now gotten to where my world is about as small as it can get. The next step would be me winning the lottery and never setting foot outside my house. Thank God it's very difficult to win the lottery. Otherwise, I would have enabled myself into a shell. But so for the past 6 months, I have been stuck in rumination. I've been ruminating, trying to just dive deep into my mind and figure out what the hell is wrong. But all I was doing there was amplifying the problems that I was experiencing. And it really made things a lot worse. It exacerbated and deteriorated my mental state to the point that when I finally snapped out of ruminating, I was able to essentially see early signs of bipolar. I won't say disorder. I said it by saying I wouldn't say it, but don't want to go there. But I was also seeing some early warning signs of schizophrenia. Now, I'm not a professional. I know you need to be diagnosed by a professional, but just at least knowing the symptoms and being able to finally rip myself out of my mind, take a step back and think about it, kind of just like partition your mind to get away from diving deep into the problems, allows you to get a different reference point so you can reframe the problems. And it felt like a breath of fresh air being able to do that. It's all I've managed to do was realize that what I was trying to do to improve my mental state was making it worse. And so that was my realization. My discovery was quit exacerbating your own mental health. Get the hell out of my head, jackass. And by doing so, I can't believe I feel better about knowing that thinking too much, spending too much time in my head is what was killing me there. So I feel more alive knowing that fact. And so I do want to, in reflecting back and listening back to the previous episodes, 1 through 11 of Rawcast, there very much was an underlying theme where it's all about mental health. And so having gotten to the point where all I did was work and raise kids, like I very much enjoy my children, and I hope to share more stories about them in the future. It's just, I'm not very good at documenting like the fun interactions with my kids and stuff like that. And I can't share video clips of it because, well, this is an audio-only podcast until we can raise up the funds to get a decent video camera. But you can understand how talking about that stuff is much more difficult to accomplish when you are too caught up in your own mind. But having said all that, I do want to improve my mental health. You know, it took me a long-ass time just to sit down and Google something. I felt like I had a mental block jammed into my head, like this spiritual wedge that wouldn't allow my brain to communicate with itself in a healthy enough way for me to live what felt like a happy, normal life. I can't believe it took me that long to Google it. But then, thank you to a high school classmate of mine, Jordan, for reaching out to me. Gave me some good suggestions on getting some education in the mental health realm. It's a vast subject. It'd kind of be like, oh, I like metal music. Well, metal is very diverse. genre of music with the largest number of subgenres, many of which I haven't even heard, despite the fact that I'm a fan of metal. So it is a huge topic, and I'm taking my baby steps. The first thing I did was listen to a podcast that I listened to fucking NPR. Like, not like I'm a devout listener, you know, but I listen to NPR on an almost daily basis. Now I'm going through my notes again because I want to get the name right. I lost the window that I was in. But the very first, I was right. The very first thing I did was tune into NPR's podcast called Hidden Brain. And unfortunately, I only have that name written down. The narrator is great. I very much enjoy it. I've already listened to 5 episodes in the past 16 hours. And so, I mean, I'm going down a journey to better understand my own mind, not by diving deep into my own head and getting stuck there spinning the fucking wheels in the mud for months at a time. I actually got some suggestions that I'm following through with to educate myself from a professional standpoint. I'm kind of, it's like secondhand advice from professionals with the media that I am going to be gobbling up. And so I know people in my personal life that struggle with mental issues. And I guess what I'm saying is, even though I'm not a professional, I'm more of a patient than a physician. But I didn't realize that I was sharing my own mental health struggles. You know, I wanted this to be about topics. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with the podcast, and I kind of want to focus it on mental health, at least for a while. Because writers write what they know. And given that I've made my world a whole hell of a lot smaller over the past 12 years, God, that's a long chunk of time. That's a long chunk of time to basically feel out of it. So I do want to make mental health the focus of Rawcast going forward a little bit. I will let more of my goofy side show, my dirty fucking side of my personality, because I love the dark humor and I love having the absolute freedom of speech in practice. Yeah. There's some shit you're not going to say. You're not going to say the N-word, you know? You're not going to you're not going to dox people. I just want to have a no-holds-barred ha-ha time with the My Three Bitches podcast that I do with my wife, Jessica. As far as I know, I'm going to have to wrap this up in a little bit to go help with dinner, because if we get our chores done, we get to do My Three Bitches episode 2. It's going to be phenomenal. So, I do want to thank Jordan. I'm not going to use the last name because I didn't get permission to even talk about this yet. I got home, poured that glass of wine, didn't even fucking touch it, put it down in my office, got everything taken care of, including the mic test, before I even had that fucking sip. But I knew that I was drinking too much, so I'm cutting that shit out. No beer in the house right now. I'm proud of myself. That's a step. Not only was I ruminating too much, but I was also drinking too much, which was only exacerbating the symptoms. You know, when you want to make yourself feel better, stop doing the shit that hurts. But that's about it. I'm feeling fucking great despite a miserable day because I had a bit of a breakthrough, a bit of a discovery, and now I feel like I have more of a direction. Rather than sitting here going, what's wrong with you? I don't know, let's figure it out. Well, why the fuck didn't I reach out to somebody? Obviously, it can be very fucking difficult. When you're stuck in the thick of it, reaching out to somebody can be hard. Especially when the majority of the people around you, even family members that don't understand that they don't know that they're doing it. Sometimes they do, and if you are, you're a fucking prick. But if somebody opens up to you about their mental health struggles, don't be a jackass. There's a long list of that. But when you unintentionally give a dismissive comment, it's just going to make that person who's in the middle of that struggle close up even more and not reach out. This isn't a call for compassion necessarily, though it wouldn't fucking hurt people. Wouldn't hurt to be nice. But I feel like this isn't the end of the path. I'm not doomed to suffer between my ears. There's hope to be had, and there is plenty of material for me to consume to become more educated in this topic. I feel like being open and talking about this stuff is a step towards normalizing it. For anybody that, finds this podcast, not that I'm a superstar by any fucking means, but anybody that listens to this podcast that has been struggling alone and it helps hearing somebody else talk about their own mental struggles and encourages them to get the help they need. I'm not talking about just lining up for a fucking pill mill. I'm talking about finding what works for you, finding a healthy process forward so that you can live the best you. If even one person listens to this and allows themselves to start going to therapy or to start heading in the direction that's going to better their mind, I'm all for it. And that's the direction I want to go with this podcast, at least for a time. Never commit 100%. Always leave yourself an out, says the person who cancels every fucking time there's an event going on. So, because I don't tell my stories in a straight line, it ends up looking more like the icing on the Hostess cupcakes. I apologize for that. If you're able to follow along, kudos to you, because even I get lost. But since I want to keep the time frame down on these podcasts, I'm going to do my research in the meantime. When I can. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you're sure as fuck not going to become knowledgeable from a professional standpoint in mental health overnight. But I do want to point out that in the next episode, I want to talk about the lack of productivity when you end up in rumination for too long. And my little trick that I use for myself to make sure that I stay productive as long as I need to for my own sake. That's not just this needs to get done now, but I want to achieve more today. And so we're going to talk a little bit about productivity, how to snap yourself out of the stuck in the mind mud. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. It isn't a finish line, it's a starting line. And I'm going on a new journey to better understand myself and hopefully help a bunch of people along the way. Not that I'm going to become a cult leader. As sweet as that would be. I mean, fucking Jonestown, Manson family. There's a whole list I could go through. I just wanted to say something kind of fucked up at the end. So, hopefully you're all doing well. And if you're having one of those tough mental days, you're not alone. But tomorrow is a new day.